All of our guests today. We have an important agenda as usual with two different items. One is voting on 5 noms that we've already heard, and then proceed to hearings on the 3 gentlemen that are before us today. As usual, I will tell our audience that we welcome you. This is an open hearing. It's public. On the other hand, there'll be no audience participation of any kind. By now, everyone knows we have a zero tolerance on that. There'll be an arrest and expulsion for a year. So with that, I think what we will do is we have some other committees meeting and having business meetings right at the top. So I think Senator Shaheen and I have talked about this, and we will proceed is we'll go ahead with the hearing on the nominees that are here before us. And then when we get the others who are on the committee, we will proceed to vote on the business aspect of what we need to do today. So with that, Senator Shaheen and I will make our opening statements on this. So I'll start first, and I want to thank our nominees and their families for being here today, and particularly for your willingness to serve. Your efforts are sorely needed as America faces threats from around the world every single day. In the Middle East, tensions are high. Hezbollah remains a disruptive presence into the real possibility for reform in Lebanon. Lebanon's moved forward substantially, but there is still Hezbollah presence, and they're working on it. Baghdad must disarm the Iranian-backed militias. We're all hoping to see change out of al-Shara's government in Syria, and there is an opportunity to isolate Iran, reinforce our Gulf and Israeli partners, and permanently roll back Iranian influence. Mr. Rayburn, as Assistant Secretary for Near East Asia, you'll be integral in helping President Trump and Secretary Rubio as they work to secure a more stable Middle East for a safer America. President Trump is committed to isolating Iran, the root of all problems in the region. His maximum pressure is working. As Assistant Secretary, I hope you'll work to ensure that, above all else, Iran never possesses a nuclear weapon, and that you'll work with our allies to continue supporting our friend Israel. America also faces challenges in Europe. Over the last decade, and particularly in the last 3 years, Putin's aggression has created the largest security crisis in Europe since the Second World War. President Trump is working diligently to help bring an end to this conflict, and we need to continue to work with our European allies to confront the security challenges facing Europe. Mr. Pratt, when you take the helm as Assistant Secretary for Political Military Affairs, you'll need to work with our allies in Europe, Asia, Latin America, and beyond to counter our shared adversaries. It's no secret that hostile powers have formed an authoritarian axis bent on weakening the United States. Arms sales help us collaborate with partners as we confront these authoritarian actors. The administration has prioritized addressing the bureaucratic delays and burdensome regulations plaguing our foreign military sales process. I hope you'll work to reform the PM Bureau so we can provide our closest allies with weapons they need faster than what we have been doing. China will present a particular challenge to you. Its military is rapidly modernizing, its shipbuilding capacity makes us look weak, and its development of dual-use artificial intelligence is growing more advanced by the day. In this dangerous security environment, we and our allies need to help ourselves by improving burden sharing, increasing defense spending, and building joint capabilities. The Chinese government also aggressively encroaches on its neighbors' territory and wields its large economy, backed by state subsidies and IP theft, to gain unfair advantages. China's United Front actors undertake malign influence operations that seek to bend countries around the world to the CCP's will. Mr. Desambre, as Assistant Secretary for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, I look forward to hearing how you will oversee changes in the EAP Bureau to position it to counter China's aggression. If we don't, China's malign influence will only continue to spread. I'd like to thank all of you again for being here with us today, your willingness to serve, and your family's willingness to help you serve. We have moved a number of nominees to our committee this year, and I look forward to the 3 of you joining their ranks. With that,
we have a quorum.
All right, I'm told we have a quorum. So with that, we're going to take up 5 nominees. We'll take them in the order that they've been listed. The First one is the nomination of Caleb Orr of Texas to be Assistant Secretary of State, Economic and Business Affairs. Do I have a motion to send it to the floor? It's been moved and seconded. Is there debate? There being none. Senator Shaheen.
Yes,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, I'm going to support Mr. Orr because I think he's got the qualifications to manage the Economic and Business Affairs Bureau. But I would just again point out, as I did at our last business meeting, that part of our job is to provide advise and consent with respect to the jobs that we're confirming people to hold. And given the disruption that's going on at the Department of State and the reorganization plans, we don't know what his responsibilities are going to be. So while I intend to support him, I'm going to be also asking for additional clarity about what he's actually going to be doing if he is sworn in and confirmed by the Senate. And I would hope that we would join as a committee in clarifying the responsibilities of all of these nominees.
Yeah, that's an absolutely fair request, Senator Shaheen. I commit to work with you on that.
Thank you.
Further comment? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Aye. Mr. McCormick.
Aye.
Haynes. Aye. Mr. Hagerty.
Aye.
Mr. Barrasso.
Aye by proxy. Aye by proxy.
Mr. Paul. No. Mr. Cruz.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Scott. Aye. Mr. Curtis. Aye. Mr. Cornyn. Aye by proxy.
Aye by proxy.
Mrs. Shaheen.
Aye.
Mr. Coombs.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Murphy.
No.
Mr. Kane.
No by proxy.
Mr. Merkley.
No.
Mr. Booker.
No by proxy.
Mr. Schatz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Van Hollen.
No by proxy.
Ms. Duckworth.
No by proxy.
Ms. Rosen. No. Mr. Chairman.
Aye. Clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, the yeas are 13, the nays are 9.
The motion has passed. We'll turn to Kenneth Howery of Texas to be ambassador to the Kingdom of Denmark. Is there a motion to send him to the floor?
So moved.
Seconded? Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we send Mr. Howery to the floor to be affirmatively confirmed. Is there debate?
Yes.
Senator Shaheen.
Mr. Chairman, I supported Mr. Howery's nomination to serve as ambassador to Sweden in the first Trump administration, and I do think it's critical that we have someone in Denmark because it's an important ally of the United States. I do hope, however, that he's going to refocus the conversation around Denmark and away from this delusional fantasy about taking over Greenland, because the Danes are a very valued ally and we want to keep them that way. So thank you. As I said, I do intend to support him.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. Is there further debate? There be none. Clerk will call the roll.
Aye. Mr. McCormick. Aye. Mr. Haynes.
Aye.
Mr. Hagerty.
Aye.
Mr. Barrasso. By proxy.
Aye by proxy. Aye by proxy.
Mr. Paul. Aye. Mr. Cruz.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Scott. Aye. Mr. Curtis. Aye. Mr. Cornyn. Aye by proxy.
Aye by proxy.
Mrs. Shaheen.
Aye.
Mr. Coombs.
No by proxy.
Mr. Murphy.
No.
Mr. Kane.
No by proxy.
Mr. Merkley.
No.
Mr. Booker.
No by proxy.
Mr. Schatz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Van Hollen.
No by proxy.
Ms. Duckworth.
No by proxy.
Ms. Rosen. No. Mr. Chairman.
Aye. Clerk to report.
Chairman, the yeas are 13, the noes are 9.
The motion is passed. Third one we have is Callista Gingrich of Florida to be ambassador to the Swiss Confederation and also to Liechtenstein. Do we have a motion to confirm her? It's been moved. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we send Callista Gingrich to Florida with a due pass. Is there debate? There be none. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Ricketts.
Aye.
Mr. McCormick. Aye. Mr. Haynes.
Aye.
Mr. Hagerty.
Aye.
Mr. Barrasso. Aye by proxy.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Lee.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Paul. Aye. Mr. Cruz.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Scott. Aye. Mr. Curtis. Aye. Mr. Cornyn.
Aye by proxy.
Aye. Aye by proxy.
No.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Merkley.
No.
Mr. Booker.
No by proxy.
Mr. Schatz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Van Hollen.
No by proxy.
Ms. Duckworth.
No by proxy.
Aye. Clerk report.
Mr. Chairman, the yeas are 15, the noes are 7.
The motion is passed. We'll take up Summers Farkas of New York to be ambassador to Malta. Is there a motion to send her nomination to the floor? It's been moved and seconded. Is there debate? There being none, clerk will call the roll.
Aye.
Aye.
No by proxy. Excuse me, aye by proxy. Aye by proxy. Aye by proxy. Aye by proxy.
Aye. No by proxy.
No.
No by proxy. No by proxy. No by proxy. No by proxy. No by proxy.
Aye. Clerk report. The motion has passed. Last one we have is Leonardo Rizzuto of Florida to be ambassador for the United States to the Organization of American States. Is there a motion to send him to the floor? So moved. It's been moved and seconded that we send the nomination to the floor with a do pass recommendation. Senator Shaheen.
Mr. Chairman, I intend to vote against this nominee. In the first Trump administration, this committee, on a bipartisan basis, did not allow Mr. Rizzuto's nomination to go through when he was nominated during that first administration. He has been willing to share unfounded conspiracy theories online to attack members of Congress, including members of this committee. He has not taken responsibility for that reckless behavior, and I don't think he's got either the experience or the understanding to serve as an effective representative of the United States to the OAS. So I certainly intend to oppose his nomination.
Thank you, Senator. Is there further debate? There being no further debate, clerk will call the roll.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye by proxy. Aye by proxy. Aye by proxy. Aye by proxy.
No. No by proxy.
No.
No by proxy.
No.
No by proxy. No by proxy. No by proxy. No by proxy.
Aye. Clerk report. Motion is passed. That completes the business portion of our meeting today, and we'll continue on with the hearing on the nominations that are before us today. So we'll hear now from the nominees.
No, you're going to hear from me first?
Did you want to say something?
Yes.
I apologize. I want to recognize Senator Shaheen for her opening statement.
Thank you,
What
Mr.
happens when you
Chairman.
get out of-
And welcome to the nominees and to your families and supporters who are here today. Of all the recent events in the Middle East, one of the most consequential is the fall of the Assad regime in Syria. Assad not only killed and tortured countless Syrians and forced millions more into exile, but the regime precipitated the rise of ISIS and allowed Putin and Iran to project military influence across the Middle East. The collapse of the Assad regime created a once-in-a-generation opportunity, a chance to deny our adversaries, Iran, Russia, and China, not to mention ISIS, a base for operations, and a chance for the Syrian people to retake their country and chart their own future. The Syrian government has done a lot of what we've asked, the new Syrian government, that is, working to eliminate chemical weapons, clamping down on the Captagon drug trade, helping to search for missing Americans. So I was very pleased, and Senator Risch and I did a statement in support of President Trump's announcement earlier this week that he would lift U.S. sanctions on Syria. Mr. Rayburn, if confirmed, you will be charged with overseeing U.S. policy on Syria, among other things. So I'd like to hear how you will ensure that we make the most of this moment. It's imperative that the administration ensures all sanctions and restrictions on Syria are lifted, assuming Syria continues to move in the positive direction. I think it's also important to facilitate a sustained dialogue with Syrian officials to ensure that they stay on the right path, and we need to move quickly because we're seeing efforts by Russia and Iran to move in. Too many Syrians have lost their lives fighting oppression to let this window of opportunity pass. What's happening in Syria is not an isolated event. It's part of a global competition for influence with our adversaries. Unfortunately, the cuts to foreign aid by the administration and to other programs that counter China are leaving our allies and partners isolated and vulnerable. This puts additional pressure on countries like Vietnam or Indonesia to hedge their bets against the United States. And many nations in the Indo-Pacific region are longstanding American allies, and yet right now we risk pushing them into China's hands. So, Mr. Desambre, I hope you'll talk about how you would work to bolster our ties across East Asia and the Pacific to counter PRC influence. And finally, Mr. Pratt, you've been nominated to serve as the Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs. In this role, you'll be charged with overseeing arms sales and the process of notifying Congress on arms sales. As you're aware, this committee takes very seriously its role in reviewing arms sales, and we expect the State Department to uphold its obligation to closely consult with both the chair and ranking member of this committee on all military sales. I would just point out there was a really interesting hearing in the Armed Services Committee earlier this morning on this very issue that I'm sure you would find instructive if confirmed. Mr. Pratt, I'd like to add that I understand that to date you have been particularly transparent and expressed a willingness to build a relationship with this committee, and I want you and all the nominees to know that those efforts are noticed, so thank you very much for that. I look forward to hearing from each of our nominees today. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Senator Shaheen. Before we hear from the nominees, Senator Hagerty, I understand you want to make a couple of introductions. Is that correct?
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Risch and Ranking Member Shaheen, for holding this hearing. It's a great honor for me today to introduce two exceptionally gifted professionals and two very good friends, Joel Rayburn and Ambassador Michael Desambre. I'm going to start with Joel, but before I do, and I've done this before, I'd like to direct some comments to the staff that's sitting along the wall. Joel Rayburn served on my staff. He is one of the most outstanding professionals I've ever worked with, and his time here in the United States Senate, I think, is going to serve him very well in the role that I hope he's confirmed to play. And I hope that all of you take this as an inspiration, and I hope that all of you will consider doing something like Joel is preparing himself to do right now. So I just want to make that comment to each of you. I know you work your hearts out. I know you spend long hours and weekends here, but that will put you in a position to do what someone like Joel Rayburn is about to do. And I just wanted to remind you of that. Back to the case at hand, Joel Rayburn. Joel's nomination comes at a pivotal time for the United States in the Middle East and North Africa. And while there are many challenges in the region, including Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, and other foreign terrorist organizations that Iran sponsors, our nation also has enormous opportunities to strengthen our relationships with key allies and partners, as the President's trip to the Middle East this week has powerfully illustrated. At this juncture, I believe no one is better qualified to be the Assistant Secretary of State responsible for this region than Joel Rayburn. As an avid historian who has served in a variety of leadership roles related to the Middle East, Joel is an expert in the region's culture, its history, and the many other factors that will determine the success of our policy there. Joel is a proud military veteran who's shown he's committed to public service on behalf of our great nation. After graduating from West Point in 1992, Joel went on to serve as an artillery and intelligence officer in the U.S. Army for over 26 years. During his distinguished military career, Joel was deployed to the Middle East multiple times, giving him the opportunity to hone his knowledge of the region and its languages, as well as his diplomatic skills. From 2007 to 2011, for example, Joel worked for General David Petraeus as a strategic intelligence advisor in Iraq and Afghanistan. In President Trump's first term, Joel served on the National Security Council as Senior Director for Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. Joel then served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Levant Affairs and concurrently as Special Envoy for Syria from 2018 to 2021. So, Ranking Member Shaheen, I think there's no one better to address the questions that you raised about Syria than Joel Rayburn. Most recently, Joel served on my Senate staff as my advisor for Middle Eastern Affairs, and I was able to see firsthand just why the military and the White House trusted Joel so much. Joel's sound advice, born from his lifetime of focus on the region, helped me immensely, as I know it will help the State Department and the people of the United States. More important, I saw Joel as a wonderful father, someone with the heart and the humility to pay it forward for the next generation through his own selfless public service. Joel could not be better qualified to be the next Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs, and I urge my colleagues in this committee to move quickly on his nomination. Let me now turn to another colleague and friend, Ambassador Michael DeSambre. I'm excited that President Trump tapped Michael as his nominee to be the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia and Pacific Affairs. Michael and I both served as U.S. ambassadors in Asia during President Trump's first term. The Trump administration rightly identifies the Indo-Pacific region as a top priority for U.S. foreign policy. This region contains 4.3 billion people, about 60% of the world's population, and it's responsible for almost 2/3 of global maritime trade. The region is also home both to some of America's closest allies and partners, as well as to many of our most serious threats. If confirmed, Michael will be at the forefront of U.S. efforts to address the significant challenges in the region, while also pursuing tremendous opportunities critical to our economic prosperity and to our national security. As someone who's worked in East Asia as both a businessman and a diplomat, I speak from experience when I say that Michael is the right person for this role. Building on his education at Stanford and Harvard in economics, law, and East Asian studies, Michael's significant experience in the region makes him exceptionally qualified for this role. As a business leader in Asia, Michael advised multinational corporations on complex cross-border transactions and worked issues related to U.S. national security. And as a philanthropist, Michael led initiatives focused on the education, health care, and protection of kids that benefited tens of thousands of children in the region. In addition to his success as a businessman and a philanthropist in Asia, Michael is also a successful diplomat. As U.S. Ambassador to Thailand during President Trump's first term, Michael used his business background and skill set to create mutual economic opportunities that brought the American and Thai economies closer together. In all, Michael has spent more than 2 decades of his life in Asia. He speaks Mandarin fluently and is also familiar with both Korean and Japanese languages. If confirmed, Michael will once again use his experience and knowledge to strengthen our diplomatic relationships and to advance our nation's interest in the region. Mr. Chairman, thank you again for the opportunity to introduce my friends and former colleagues, Joel Rayburn and Michael DeSambre. I encourage this committee to support their nomination.
Thank you, Senator Haggerty. Your opinion obviously means a lot to all of us, so thank you for sharing it with us. We appreciate that. We'll now hear from each of the nominees. We'd ask you that you keep your remarks to about 5 minutes. If you have further you want to add, we'll be more than happy to add them to the record when the hearing is over. Mr. Rayburn, we'll start with you. The floor is yours.
Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the privilege of coming before you today as the President's nominee to serve as Assistant Secretary for Near Eastern Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. It's a time of rapid change in the Middle East, presenting the United States with opportunities of historic proportion. The first area of opportunity lies with Iran. Israel's military successes in 2024, coupled with the departure of the Assad regime, crippled Hezbollah and brought the Iranian-sponsored axis of resistance to its weakest point in decades. We now have the opportunity to use our diplomacy to capitalize on these changes so as to neutralize the threat Tehran has posed to U.S. interests and allies since 1979, including by ensuring the Iranian regime can never develop or obtain a nuclear weapon. We also have the opportunity to ensure that the Iranian regime can no longer use Lebanon and Syria as platforms for destabilizing the region, thereby giving those beleaguered countries a chance for a more promising future. Second, there is a concurrent opportunity to promote peace and prosperity in the region by building on the landmark Abraham Accords, both by deepening the existing agreements reached in 2020 and by helping to forge new accords with new peace partners as well. The Gulf region, where the United States is growing its strategic partnerships and becoming the partner of choice, will naturally be a major focus of this effort. As the President's trip shows, the United States will benefit enormously by increasing our competitiveness in that region and providing opportunities for U.S. companies to help drive regional integration. I support the administration's commitment to strengthening the existing partnerships between Israel and the UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco, while also promoting normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia and other Arab states. Not only are these peace and normalization initiatives imperative for regional security and economic integration, but they also create opportunities for U.S. businesses, thereby expanding our trade and helping to make our country more prosperous. The President's first international trip during this administration proves it is time we expand on our relationships in the Gulf, expand them from security to prosperity. Third, the developments in Syria and the weakening of the Iranian regime's terrorist proxies region-wide are creating another specific opportunity across the northern Middle East, the potential to end the conflict between our NATO ally Turkey and the PKK, a conflict that has been a source of violence and instability for almost half a century. The parties to that conflict are signaling an openness to end it, and the United States has a strong interest in using our diplomatic influence and tools to help bring that about. Resolving the conflict would be game-changing for the people of Turkey, Iraq, and Syria in particular. Alongside these opportunities, there are some risks and dangers to our interests. First, the conflict that began with Hamas's October 7, 2023 attacks on Israel must be brought to a conclusion in which the hostages are returned home and Hamas no longer poses a significant military threat. The President has been clear. Hamas cannot continue as a military or government force. The President also envisages a better future for the Palestinian people. That is why the administration has been working with Israel and many of our Arab allies to support these goals. Another danger to address in the region is the threat of jihadist terrorist groups such as ISIS and al-Qaeda. We and our allies defeated the ISIS caliphate in Iraq and Syria, but we must remain vigilant to ensure its remnants cannot exploit regional political conflicts to try and make a comeback. Finally, our relationships in the region must be a bulwark against efforts by China to extend its influence. This includes engaging partners in the public and private sectors on the dangers of employing Chinese-origin technology and why joining our trusted technology ecosystem is beneficial. The United States has a strong interest in ensuring that our Gulf allies integrate into U.S.-led technology, economic, and security ecosystems and preventing permanent Chinese security presence in the region. I know that Secretary Rubio is clear-eyed about the challenges of the region: conflict, terrorism, economic integration, and Iran's continuing attempts to destabilize its neighbors. But I also know he recognizes the potential for breakthroughs that would have enormous benefit for America and for international security. If confirmed, I look forward to helping guide U.S. diplomacy to the accomplishment of these national goals and also to working with the committee on these issues. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions. And I want to offer specific thanks to Senator Hagerty for his very kind and generous introduction. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Rayburn. Mr. Pratt, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I am honored by President Trump's nomination to serve as the Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs and very grateful for Secretary Rubio's support. If confirmed, I'm committed to working hand in hand with this committee and with Congress to advance our nation's security priorities, particularly in foreign military sales reform, technology licensing, security cooperation, and export controls. Throughout my career in public service, I have worked at the intersection of diplomacy, security, and national interests. At the State Department, I served as Deputy Special Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs, where I was privileged to lead efforts that brought wrongfully detained Americans home. That experience underscored the importance of collaboration across government agencies and with our elected representatives to protect and serve the American people. Since my nomination, I've had valuable discussions with many of you and your staff regarding the national security challenges we face. For example, China continues to pursue policies that undermine U.S. interests across the globe. Iran remains a destabilizing force in the Middle East and beyond. North Korea continues to advance its weapons. Actors persist in seeking ways to harm the United States and our allies. In this complex environment, strengthening our relationships with key allies in order to advance our national interests remain paramount. One of our most critical and enduring partnerships is with Israel. As President Trump has unequivocally stated, the United States must remain a steadfast partner to Israel as it faces growing threats from terrorist organizations and hostile actors in the region. If confirmed, I will work closely with Congress to ensure our security cooperation with our closest partners remains robust and continues to serve our mutual strategic interests while addressing humanitarian rights issues and adherence to applicable humanitarian law. Despite today's threats, I am optimistic. I believe in the power of American diplomacy when supported by strategic alignment between the State Department, Congress, and our interagency partners. As Secretary Rubio has noted, the State Department must be a force multiplier, advancing America First policies that make our nation safer, stronger, and more prosperous. If confirmed, I will ensure that the Bureau of Political Military Affairs is a proactive and collaborative partner in that mission. If confirmed, a top priority will be to deepen the cooperation between the State Department and the Department of Defense. The PM Bureau plays a central role in ensuring that U.S. diplomatic and military efforts are aligned and mutually reinforcing. This includes ensuring that U.S. military personnel abroad are secured with the agreements and legal frameworks necessary to operate with maximum protections and the full backing of our civilian leadership. Another key focus area is improving the efficiency and effectiveness of U.S. foreign military sales. These programs are vital, not only to strengthening our security partnerships abroad, but also to supporting the U.S. defense industrial base and American jobs at home. I'm committed to working with Congress and industry leaders to streamline processes, reduce unnecessary delays, and implement President Trump's recent executive order to reform foreign military sales with transparency and accountability. Also, if confirmed, working with Congress to streamline regulatory processes will be a critical component of my agenda. I will work in close consultation with Congress to ensure that our regulatory frameworks remain rigorous, while also enabling U.S. companies to compete and innovate in a rapidly evolving global defense marketplace. In every area of responsibility, my approach will be rooted in partnership with Congress, with industry, with our allies, and across the U.S. government. If confirmed, I will lead with transparency, engagement, and a clear sense of purpose in advancing America's security and prosperity. Thank you for this opportunity to appear before you. I look forward to your questions, and if confirmed, working closely with you. And finally, in recognition of National Police Week, I just want to give a shout out to our brothers and sisters in law enforcement. Thank you.
Very appropriate, Mr. Pratt. Thank you very much. Mr. DeSomber.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Shaheen, and distinguished members of the committee, I'm honored to appear before you today as the President's nominee for Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs. I am grateful to President Trump and Secretary Rubio for their trust and confidence. I appreciate the time that the members and staff of this committee have spent with me. If confirmed, I look forward to working closely with each of you. On a personal note, I would like to thank my wife and 4 children for their support of my desire to serve our great country. My wife, Jean, and I met and married while in law school and have been married for over 32 years. Jean has always been my inspiration, and together we have built our respective professional careers while together raising 4 wonderful children, Winona, Gabrielle, Michael Ray, and Phoenix. Unfortunately, given the challenges of our large multi-career family, only my daughter, Winona, her husband, Derek, and my son, Michael Ray, are able to be here today. I also would like to thank my parents, Eugene and Nancy, for their support. Mom and Dad were not able to make it here in person, but I know they're watching the live stream back in Chicago. Since a young age, I've been motivated to serve our country. I believe that my experience in legal, economic, strategic, and diplomatic matters over the past 35 years is directly relevant to the position for which I've been nominated. I'm excited to have the opportunity to work in the most consequential region of the world. I've been a student of strategic issues since the late 1980s when I received my master's degree in East Asian Studies focused on Chinese military and foreign policy. I built on my academic background in my professional career as a transactional attorney and diplomat. I have seen firsthand the tremendous opportunities for America in Asia, as well as the challenges presented by China's economic and military modernization, while living and working in Hong Kong and China over the past 28 years. As head of Sullivan & Cromwell's acquisition practice for Asia, I've advised many Western corporations on complex transactions involving many different Asian countries. I've lived or worked in many of the countries within the EAP region and have advised clients on high-stakes negotiations in those countries. I was honored to have had the opportunity to serve as the United States Ambassador to the Kingdom of Thailand in 2020, where I led an outstanding interagency team on behalf of the American people. If confirmed, I will apply my background in law, commerce, strategic issues, and diplomacy in Asia to implement the President's foreign policy priorities in the Indo-Pacific. I will ensure that all foreign policy decisions follow the Secretary's test. Does this make us safer? Does this make us stronger? Does this make us more prosperous? I believe our Indo-Pacific policy will entail a focus on three primary priorities. First, to promote U.S. strength and security by working closely with our allies, partners, and friends in the Indo-Pacific to enhance deterrence and counter malign activities by our adversaries. Second, to promote U.S. prosperity through robust commercial diplomacy and reciprocal trade relations with all countries in the Indo-Pacific. And third, make the United States safer by eliminating the flow of fentanyl and illegal immigrants into our country from Asia and ensuring that all countries accept back their citizens that are illegally in our country. When training corporations how to negotiate in Asia, I recommend a style of hard on the issues, soft on the people. Hard on the issues means, in this context, an unwavering commitment to focus exclusively on what is good for America, putting America first. But soft on the people means that it is almost always useful to develop personal relationships to help achieve the best results on the issues. If confirmed as Assistant Secretary, I commit to spend substantial time traveling the region to develop the necessary relationships to achieve results for the American people. I also am committed to leading the various embassies in EAP with a high-touch method. Consistent with my practice in the private sector, if confirmed, I would speak personally and often with ambassadors in the field to directly convey the President's and Secretary's foreign policy priorities and provide frequent opportunities for unfiltered feedback and information flow from the field. In addition to promoting U.S. diplomatic and security interests, if confirmed, I will focus on expanding commercial opportunities, which in turn will reinforce our national security efforts. This was an area of my focus as ambassador, and if confirmed, I will ensure that all of the embassies in EAP have strong commercial diplomacy teams, which we will support from here in D.C. Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, and members of the committee, I approach this nomination with a sense of excitement and responsibility. If confirmed, I look forward to working with you to make America safer, stronger, and more prosperous by addressing issues facing our nation in one of the most consequential regions of the world. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Summer. We appreciate that. We'll now do a round of 5-minute questions, and I'm going to start first, and I'm going to start with Mr. December, you and Mr. Rayburn. You know, when President Trump left office, we had Iran down to under 200,000 barrels of oil a day that they were able to sell, which was really putting the hurt on them appropriately. And after that, it's gone up to almost 2 million barrels a day. And now the president wants to turn the screw on Iran again, and I'm all with him. Mr. December and Mr. Rayburn, both of you, I'd like to get your, understanding you haven't taken office yet, but I'd like to get your thoughts on that and how you might go about assisting in that regard. And again, I appreciate that you haven't taken office yet, but your thoughts, if you would, starting with you, Mr. Rayburn.
Senator, thank you for that question. This is an important issue. The president has made it clear it's his policy to bring a maximum pressure approach back on the Iranian regime, particularly on its revenue streams driven by its oil exports. You are correct. In the first Trump administration, I was part of generating the apparatus that enforced those sanctions and was able to cut the flow of Iranian oil exports. That's by, for example, disrupting the ghost fleet of vessels that the Iranian regime uses, and then by engaging with our allies and partners and with the insurance sector, with the flagging countries, for example, in order to make it so that it's very difficult for the Iranian regime to physically move the oil, in addition to also enforcing sanctions on the financial side so they're unable to move the money that goes along with those transactions. We had great results there, Senator, and I think that we can ramp that enforcement apparatus back up and repeat the performance.
It's good news. We hope you can dust off that apparatus and hopefully crank it up a little bit and put the maximum pressure as possible. Mr. DeSombre, your thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for that question. Clearly, implementing the maximum pressure campaign is something that does require efforts around the world. I believe 90% of oil exports from Iran go to China, and thus obviously stopping those exports and affecting that is something of critical importance. I believe just yesterday the Secretary of State or the Department of State sanctioned individuals and entities in China and Hong Kong for their support of missile technology also in Iran, so that's also an area where there's an interplay between China and Iran. So these are critical issues, and it's an area where hopefully if I'm confirmed and if Joel Rayborn is confirmed, we can work together on these issues to deal with the nexus between China and Iran.
We look forward to it. Thanks so much. Mr. Rayburn, I want to talk about Syria for a minute. You know, on December 8th, when Assad fell, we all partied and felt well about it till we found out who it was that took over. Obviously, the new administration has a checkered past. Having said that, it is quite a ways in the past, number one. And number two, they started saying the right things and indeed doing the right things mostly since they took over. I think it's, I don't want to speak for the ranking member, but she and I have talked about this at some length, and we think this is an opportunity really to get in there. We've discussed this. We met with the foreign minister, the new Syrian foreign minister in Munich earlier this year, and talked with him about their thoughts and plans and what have you. We have been pursued by all sides. Myself and this committee and Senator Shaheen were all instrumental in getting the Caesar sanctions put in place that we think were at least helpful in bringing Assad down. Now we were under pressure to do the opposite of that and start removing them. We had actually written the president and asked him to relieve the sanctions, and now he has done that a little more robustly than we had in mind. Nonetheless, we're still in a wait and see. Those sanctions were taken off. They can be put back on, and we're going to continue to watch this. We really hope this works out. Syria is a proud country, long history. They have the ability to do this. Whether they can do it or not remains to be seen. But in any event, your thoughts on where we're headed there?
Senator, thank you for raising this. I think the president is giving the Syrian people and the Syrian interim authorities a golden opportunity, a chance to rebuild after half a century under oppressive rule, and especially the debilitating war that they went through and where the people suffered, largely at the hands of the Assad regime and its Iranian and Russian and Hezbollah allies. He's giving them a chance to turn the page on that and chart a new course. He's also been very clear, as has Secretary Rubio, that there are expectations as we move along the path, as the United States moves along the path of giving them this opportunity. The president has certain expectations. Secretary Rubio has laid out certain expectations that they're going to move and turn the page commensurately, including by a normalization agreement with Israel, including by deporting Palestinian terrorists, by telling foreign terrorists, foreign fighters that they have to leave Syria, by assisting in the the U.S.-led international campaign against ISIS to make sure ISIS doesn't make a resurgence, and then also to take responsibility for the ISIS detention centers in northeast Syria. So I think these are parallel tracks, and both sides have a golden opportunity to move that country into a much brighter future.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rayburn. And by the way, that administration is well aware of our expectations. The list that you just described, I discussed this with both the president and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and laid out the expectations Senator Shaheen and I laid out in Munich to the foreign minister. We got no pushback from him at all. I might add one more important item on there that is important to us, and I think both President and Secretary of State Rubio feel the same way, and that is we have an expectation that the tolerance for the various religions, and it is a complex society, both ethnically and religious-wise. The tolerance is critically important to the success of that country. The Syrians tell us that they are well experienced in this since they've been doing it for hundreds of years, and we're going to have to wait and see if they continue with that, because that is going to be critical to their success. So with that, Senator Shaheen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Rayburn, just to follow up on Chairman Risch's comments. If confirmed, will you commit to swiftly moving to ensuring that the sanctions are lifted in a positive way in Syria?
Senator, thank you for that question. If I'm confirmed, I will carry out the President, Secretary Rubio's instructions to implement the policy guidance that the President has laid out, yes.
I appreciate that, and I have been concerned by some rumors that I have heard in some circles that have been repeated to me by people from the Middle East that they have heard in foreign policy circles of the administration, that one option that's been suggested is assassinating the new leader of the Syrian government, Mr. Ahmed al-Sharaa. Can you just talk about what the implications of that kind of action would mean for Syria and for the region?
Senator, I'm not familiar. I'm not familiar with efforts like that, but I think that's clearly not in line with the President's intention that he stated, or his description of Mr. Sharaa in the past couple of days.
I agree. His meeting sounded like it was very positive, and that's good news. Well, again, I think one of the things that was pointed out to us by King Abdullah was that a change in leadership of that kind would create an all-out civil war in Syria that would not be good to take advantage of the opportunity that we currently have to move that country forward. I was surprised that when you were talking about opportunities that we have, that you didn't mention Lebanon in your opening statement, because I would argue that we also have that kind of opportunity in Syria. We have in Lebanon right now as well with the new leadership there. And one of the important challenges there is to ensure that the Lebanese armed forces can continue to do the work that they need to do to help clear Hezbollah out of southern Lebanon and to disarm many of the armaments that have been brought into the country. So can you talk about how, if confirmed, you would look at supporting the LAF and helping to ensure that Lebanon continues to move forward?
Senator, thank you for raising that. Actually, in my statement, I did name Lebanon as an area where there's a golden opportunity to.
Oh, good. I'm sorry, I missed it.
To build on the Iranian regime and Hezbollah's being on the back foot and having suffered some strategic setbacks, in order to make sure that those can be a region that's so that, for example, what I stated was Syria and Lebanon can no longer be used by the Iranian regime as a platform to try to destabilize the neighboring region. I think the new Lebanese government has a golden opportunity to take advantage of that, and I know that the administration is working very closely with the Lebanese authorities to help them, to help empower them to be able to take advantage of that opportunity. The Lebanese Armed Forces is part of that, is part of the plan for following up on the ceasefire in southern Lebanon in order to try to stabilize the Lebanon-Israel border in a way that hasn't been true for more than 40 years. So I think it is a very good opportunity. It's on the Lebanese authorities now, the new Lebanese government under President Aoun, the Lebanese army. They need to seize the opportunity. I think in the past they've had some capacity problems. There's also been a problem with political will. It seems like things are changing in Beirut now, so there's an opportunity for them to move forward in a way that I think hasn't been possible before.
And so, again, if confirmed for your new role, how can you support that effort?
If I'm confirmed, Senator, I think we use our diplomacy. We use my colleague here, if he's confirmed, we'd work together to try to make sure that the Lebanese authorities have what they need to have in order to do their part of enforcing the ceasefire, stabilizing the southern border, and ensuring that Hezbollah or any other malign group can't use that Lebanese territory against Israel or any of their neighbors.
Thank you. Mr. Pratt, we talked a little bit about, and you in your opening statement talked about foreign military sales and the importance of those and how to better put in place a process that works to support our allies. One of the other areas that has been real challenge for our allies and for our own defense industrial base has been the International Traffic in Arms Regulation, or ITAR. So how would you work in your new position, if confirmed, to ensure that we can make that process work both for American industry, but also to continue to safeguard sensitive U.S. technology?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Senator, for that question. Indeed, a fun fact about when the President of the United States nominates you to be Assistant Secretary for Political and Military Affairs, I would estimate a good 70% of all human interaction thereafter involves complaints about ITAR. Very familiar, ma'am.
That sounds right. Yeah.
In fact, literally just last week, Deputy Secretary Landau summoned me to his office at State Department, and I won't reveal the contents of the discussion, but I assure you I have a very clear mandate to deal with ITAR, and as you point out, it's very important to keep our most exquisite technology out of the hands of our enemies, but there is a lot of work to be done to make it more efficient and more effective, and I look forward to working with this committee to make that happen.
Well, thank you. I'm out of time, but I look forward to hearing more about what you think we should be doing there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. You underlined how important this issue is. Myself and Senator Shaheen and our counterparts on the other side are able to stop military sales. We whine a little bit about that, but it's the other side trying to move it along and get stuff in the hands of people faster. I think part of it is just they have these Arcanian rules that overlay everything, and it seems to me every time I've been involved in this that a case-by-case basis is a much better way to handle those rather than some overall policy. But anyway, I know you're up to the task, and we'll chat again about it sometime into your time. So with that, Senator Ricketts.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rayburn, President Trump has been very clear that when it comes to Iran, he's talking about a deal that involves total disarmament of their nuclear program. That means no enrichment, no plutonium processing, no centrifuges, nothing like that. Allowing Iran to be able to enrich at any level would give them the opportunity to be able to use that then to create weapons-grade uranium for a nuclear weapon that it would be dangerous not only to us but our allies like Israel. And that's just one of the reasons why President Trump was right to withdraw from the Iranian nuclear deal before. And I might point out that Iran doesn't even use the uranium it's enriching in its nuclear reactors. It's powering those nuclear reactors with Russian uranium. So that means that everything it's enriching is actually going toward this program to create nuclear weapons. Yesterday, Senator Cruz, myself, and Tom Cotton, along with 49 of our Republican colleagues, wrote a letter to the President reinforcing that Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear program. They need to have total nuclear disarmament. And I really appreciate my colleagues in joining me in that. And the whole goal is to really strengthen the President's hand when he's negotiating with the Iranians. Do you agree with Special Envoy Witkoff that any enrichment program can never exist in the state of Iran ever again?
Senator, thank you for raising that. I do agree with Special Envoy Witkoff, and the President, Secretary Rubio, have been very clear about it as well.
Does Iran need a domestic enrichment program to have a domestic nuclear power program?
No, Senator. There are literally dozens of countries in the world that have civil nuclear programs where the countries don't have their own enrichment capability. They buy the fuel from third parties, nor do they reprocess the spent fuel.
Given Iran's previous history of deception and not allowing us to verify, how important is it to have a really strong verification program for any deal that we would be able to do with Iran?
Senator, it's essential because I think the Iranians have not operated in good faith, even under the terms of the JCPOA. They've exceeded limits that even were allowed under the JCPOA, as well as the other pattern. The rest of the pattern of their behavior since 1979 indicates there has to be very stringent controls, oversight of whatever is agreed with them.
the IAEA has said they've lost control, can't even account for anything they've got in Iran right now. Do you think that really only total disarmament of their program is the only way we can truly know that they do not have a nuclear weapons program?
Senator, I think that's in line. I think that is the President, Secretary Rubio, Special Envoy Witkoff's position, determination. I think it's wise that the Iranians don't need and should not have their own enrichment capability. If civil nuclear power is really what they're interested in, or medical research, they can buy the fuel from third parties. They don't need to have their own enrichment capability.
Great, thank you. Last month, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Last month, I led a CODEL with Senator Coons and Senator Budd to Taiwan. And the impression that was left on all of us is that we need a partner who's willing to do what's necessary for self-defense in the face of increasing aggression from Beijing. President Lai's whole of society resilience effort, through that effort, Taiwan citizens are being galvanized, prepare for an invasion and resist the coercion from the Communist government in China. The government also is focused on military reforms, including enhancing its reserve force. And on defense spending, Taiwan's legislature recently approved the largest ever national defense budget. Now, Taiwan has still got a lot of work to do on all these fronts and must do it quickly to be able to deter Communist China. But we got to do better as well, whether it's howitzers or Stinger missiles or Abrams tanks or F-16s. These are all experiencing multi-year delays. And of course, Xi Jinping has told his military to be ready to invade Taiwan by 2027. We've kind of hit upon this already, Mr. Pratt, but my understanding is that these delays are a result of both industrial base that is struggling to meet demand and bureaucratic hurdles and delays in arms sales process. If confirmed, what actions can you do to help Taiwan get more of the backlog that we've already agreed to provide to them and ensure more timely delivery?
Thank you for that, Senator. Certainly Taiwan is our most important partner, certainly the most important partner in the region. Perhaps it faces the most asymmetric threat in the history of the world and its northern neighbor there. So we're certainly very committed. I can't speak to the existing problems that you mentioned, but I'm certainly very committed, if confirmed, to taking a comprehensive review of how we can help Taiwan and increase our support thereof.
Great. So one of the action Congress could take is elevate Taiwan into the NATO plus category for shorter congressional notification timelines and higher threshold values when it comes to FMS and DCS. I recently introduced a bill, the Porcupine Act, with Senator Coons and Cornyn that would do just that. Mr. Pratt, if confirmed, what do you think of that idea? Would you support that effort?
I'm very familiar with that effort, sir, and I'm very supportive of taking a hard look and to figure out the best way forward with that.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Pratt. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Murphy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I was very interested to hear Senator Ricketts' exchange with you, Mr. Rayburn, regarding the ways in which the Trump administration is thinking about a deal with Iran. It seems pretty muddled to many of us on this committee. You likely heard Vice President Vance yesterday suggest that, in fact, the Trump administration would be open to Iran being able to enrich. The president himself posted on social media an article that outlined a deal that would allow Iran to have enrichment capabilities. So I look forward to this continued conversation. If in the end a deal gets struck in which Iran makes promises never to obtain a nuclear weapon but is given the ability to enrich to a certain level, that sounds a lot like the JCPOA. What a tragedy it would be to have thrown out the window to then just re-enter a deal on very similar parameters. I also appreciated the answer you gave on the president's decision to remove Syria sanctions. But I'm interested in your views because there's a Washington Post report this morning that says some of Trump's own officials are mounting a quiet but determined rearguard action to undermine President Trump's Syria policy, which is to lift all sanctions. I actually think the president is right, that it's time for us to lift these sanctions and give the Syrian regime a shot. But there is reporting that there are members of his team that are seeking to undermine that decision. Are you part of the group that is described here that is trying to convince the president not to lift sanctions on Syria?
Senator, thank you for that question. Senator, I'm as a private citizen, I'm not in the U.S. government. I'm not a part of the policy system, and the president has been very clear with his policy guidance. So if I'm confirmed, I'm going to implement the president's policy as handed to me also by Secretary Rubio, and that's been very clear.
But you've obviously thought and written extensively on this topic. Do you want to share your personal views with us on whether the president is right to pursue a release of these sanctions?
Senator, I support the president's goals and his initiative as he laid out just within the last 48 hours. I think it offers, as I said to Senator Shaheen and Senator Risch, it offers a golden opportunity to turn the page on more than half a century of Syria being a source of instability, a failed state, its people suffering. The president is taking a bold move to give the Syrians an opportunity to grasp that. He has expectations that he's also laid out. So I think this is a policy. If I'm confirmed, that's the policy that I'll be implementing.
Listen, help us understand the advice you are going to give the president regarding the investments that are being made by Gulf nations in the president's businesses and the direct gifts that are being made to the president. I disagree with the president's decision to do business deals with foreign nations and sovereign wealth funds and companies that are controlled by foreign governments while he's in office. And I think the American people agree. I think the reason that the announcement on the gift of the plane was so shocking is because this was different. This wasn't an investment in a Trump business. This was just a gift of a $400,000 luxury plane, $400 million luxury plane, not to the U.S. government, but apparently to Trump himself, because he was going to be allowed to take it with him to his library, whatever that is going to be, after he's out of office. So help us understand what the line is here. I think the American people don't really understand what's ethical, what is not, what advice you, as his chief advisor for the Middle East, are going to give him. Is it okay, if it's okay for the president to get investments in his businesses, if it's okay for the president to get a gift to the presidential library, what's not okay? Would it be okay for a foreign government to hand him an envelope of cash? Explain to the American people what the line is here.
Senator, thank you for the opportunity to address this. Of course, I'm not in the system, so I'm not part of the review process at this stage. I'm not privy to the engagements either within our system.
But you've obviously seen you know what the debate is here. I think on this issue, it's important to hear your personal views. Where do you think the line exists? Could you give an example of a gift or a payment to the President of the United States that would be unethical or illegal or that you would advise against?
Senator, my personal view and in my experience, the White House and President Trump are going to follow all applicable laws and ethical guidelines that govern the reception of gifts. I have no doubt that process is going to be followed to the letter.
And you don't believe that the gift of the plane violates, at the very least, the emoluments clause of the Constitution?
Senator, again, I'm not involved. I'm not in the system. I'm not involved in that process, but I am confident that the White House, that the President are going to follow all the applicable laws and ethical guidelines governing the reception of gifts.
Yeah, that is not terribly confidence-inspiring. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so next we have Mr. Paul, please.
Mr. Rayburn, you were preceded as U.S. envoy to Syria by James Jeffrey. What do you think of the job he did as U.S. envoy?
Senator, thanks for that question. Our objective, I served as his de facto deputy, with the title of Special Envoy for Syria. We were working very hard to bring pressure, in particular on the Assad regime, to try to come to an end to the conflict. We didn't succeed in that by the end of the Trump administration, but I thought we got pretty close to bringing enough pressure to bear on the Assad regime.
Do you share his worldview?
Excuse me, Senator?
Do you share his worldview?
Senator, I have my own worldview. Ambassador Jeffrey had...
Do you consider him to be a role model or a mentor or someone that you admired?
He was a very close colleague, Senator. I worked more closely with Ambassador Jeffrey than with almost anyone else I've worked with in my government career. This is true.
In your close work with him, when President Trump asked that the troops be removed after the defeat of ISIS, James Jeffrey has admitted that we were always playing shell games to not make it clear to our leadership how many troops we had there. Were you aware of that at the time?
Senator, I remember the incident you're talking about. He gave an interview to the media shortly after he left office, and he made some comments that were inaccurate. They were not correct.
Were you aware at the time that there was a game being played with the numbers to try to trick Trump into thinking that the troops were 200? Ambassador Jeffrey would go on saying, yeah, he thinks they're 200, but we're playing shell games. There's really a lot more. Were you aware at the time that this was going on?
Senator, I think that was a very unfortunate comment by Ambassador Jeffrey because, among other things, as a State Department person and me as a State Department person, we had no role in reporting troop numbers to the president and no role.
Were you aware of any deception on the part of James Jeffries or others, or complicit in that deception as to how many troops there were in Syria?
Absolutely not, Senator. Absolutely not. Never participated in any such thing. Never would have participated in any such thing. I never saw it. I don't think that.
Were you part of an email exchange discussing obscuring troop levels?
Not to my knowledge, Senator.
Did you have any oral conversation with Jeffries over underreporting the numbers in order to try to maintain troop levels against the wishes of Donald Trump?
No, sir.
It bothers me, quite a bit. I think what James Jeffries did is, tantamount to treason, basically, that this went on. He, I think this wasn't the first time he had displayed his colors. He signed a statement saying that Donald Trump was not qualified to be president, would be dangerous, lacks character values and experience, continues to display an alarming ignorance of international politics, and lacks the temperament to be president. It's amazing that he was still there, but also amazing that you still consider him to be a close colleague. So that does disturb me. And when he made these comments in 2019, did you make any public comments disavowing what he said or saying that it was untrue, his comments regarding hiding troop levels from Donald Trump?
Actually, Senator, I had to testify before the House Foreign Affairs Committee shortly after that, and I think I received that question, and I believe I responded that it didn't happen. That in my experience, that what Ambassador Jeffrey unfortunately mischaracterized in a media interview absolutely did not happen.
No further questions.
It didn't happen, Senator. It did not happen.
Okay, Mr. Kane.
Thank you to the witnesses. I'm just going to pick up on Senator Murphy's questions or line of questions about the Qataris' offer of the plane, and it's not really a question for you, but it's really a message. If folks from Qatar are watching this, you've made a grievous mistake by putting this offer on the table. If the offer had been, because of delays in producing the next version of Air Force One, we have a jet that we will make available to whoever the U.S. president is until that next aircraft is complete, it would have raised a series of questions for the committee. Is this an aircraft that can be used consistent with security protocols for the president? Can it be adequately defended? Needs it be updated? How much is the update going to cost? There would have been some questions about whether this was trying to curry favor with the Trump administration, but if it had been an even-handed offer, as long as there's a delay, here is something that the U.S. can use until the next iteration of Air Force One is complete, we could have had a debate about the details. But the notion that, and oh, by the way, it's for President Trump, and when you are done in office, this is for you to take to the presidential library and use however you want. Qatar is badly damaging any reputation you have for credibility on the Hill by making that offer. Now, I read yesterday a story that said that on the Qatari side, the offer is still under consideration. I would urge you in the strongest possible terms to change the offer to make sure that it is not an offer to a particular individual like President Trump. because by doing that, you will lead us to question your motivations for a very long time. You will damage the reputation. And let's be honest, Qatar has done a number of things that the U.S. has viewed as positive in terms of trying to help facilitate hostage release in Gaza. But Qatar has also done a number of things that cause members of this committee, based on previous statements, grave concern, including harboring Hamas leaders in Qatar. So I'm not going to try to give President Trump advice because he's not going to follow my advice. But if Qatar wants a long-term relationship with all branches of the United States government, you are about to commit a grievous error that is likely to be a permanent stain on your ethical record, and you should reconsider it. Second, Mr. Pratt, you were asked a question earlier, or maybe in a back and forth with Senator Risch. You talked about how ITAR is going to be one of your big headaches should you be confirmed. I would just encourage you, Senator Shaheen and I were just in a really, I think, instructive Armed Services hearing about foreign military sales and ITAR, and the witnesses were independent witnesses. They have experience at the Pentagon, but they were coming at it from the DOD side and talking about frustrations on the DOD side with the ITAR process. And I would just urge you and your team to take a look at that testimony and that hearing, because I think there's some good ideas in it that would help you solve this thing that I know is going to be a headache for you, but I appreciate your making it a priority. And then just a question really either for Mr. Pratt, or maybe I'll go to Mr. DeSambre first, which is about AUKUS. I'm a big supporter of AUKUS. I think the U.S., UK, Australia framework, Pillar 1 around sub-production, Pillar 2 open-ended, and it is something that can include other nations. If the Big Ten can have 16 teams, well, AUKUS can have more nations than the U.S., Australia, and the UK. Talk a little bit about the value that you see in AUKUS, and should you be confirmed, how you would want to make sure that we harvest the upside of that arrangement.
Senator, thank you very much for that question, and thank you for making the opportunity of your staff to meet with me. I greatly appreciated that. Obviously, this year we're celebrating the 74th anniversary of our ANZUS treaty with Australia, so it's been one of our longest allies in the region, and AUKUS really gives us an opportunity to increase the strength of that relationship and what we can do in the region. Obviously, Pillar 1 with the conventionally armed nuclear-powered submarine, but Pillar 2 with regard to defense technology and co-production, potentially co-development as well, could be very valuable. And my understanding, that the administration is committed to AUKUS, and I believe it's a very important part of our Indo-Pacific strategy and a way to, as I indicated with one of my priorities, work with our allies and partners to enhance deterrence and counter malign activities of our adversaries.
I appreciate that. Look forward to working with you on it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Haggerty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colonel Rayburn, I've known you as a soldier, as a gentleman, as a man whose integrity is beyond reproach. And I am more than willing to personally vouch for your character and your integrity here today for all of my colleagues. I am extremely troubled by any attempt to somehow use guilt by association with someone that you may have been, as a soldier, working with, but certainly not responsible for comments they may have made to the media, et cetera. You have been one of the most loyal members of the former Trump administration and made significant contributions. I'd just like to open the floor to you. What would you consider your greatest contribution during the first Trump administration to our national security?
Senator, thank you for the opportunity to say that. You're absolutely right. In the first Trump administration, during the campaign for president, and during this the current administration, even in my capacity as a private citizen, I support the president's policies 100%. I supported the president's policies and his ideas for America since he first announced his candidacy in 2015. I was very proud of the opportunity that I had during the first Trump administration to serve on the National Security Council staff to try to bring fresh eyes to the most critical national security problems that we faced.
I would just say that one of the greatest achievements that I think President Trump could point to in his first term were the Abraham Accords, and you played a critical role there. Could you give us, enlighten the committee here a bit about what you can say?
Absolutely, Senator. I mean, there were many people who contributed and led on the Abraham Accords. I was proud to play a small part both in the run-up to the Abraham Accords and then in my role as at the State Department in the Near East Bureau at the time, in playing a supporting role, and including by, for Senator, taking the necessary step of implementing the president's policy to show that we were willing to neutralize the threat from the Iranian regime in order to create the political space for our other allies and partners to make the historic agreements to reach peace between Arab partners and our Israeli allies, so that they could be confident and take the political risk that they had to take in order to make those concessions, to work with our Israeli allies, to work with our Arab partners and allies to bring that about. I was very proud of that and still am.
I am too. When I served as ambassador, I worked very hard to get secondary sanctions imposed in Iran. I did it with Japan. We stopped their purchases of energy from Iran. Maximum pressure actually worked. You worked on the prosperity piece of that equation, and the resolve that was demonstrated by America under President Trump with your able assistance, I think, made a massive contribution. And I just want to be clear that those contributions should be viewed in light of who you are. And certainly, any attempt to try to tie you to somebody else that is not you, someone you might have reported to because that was the chain of command that you respect as a soldier, I think is wholly inappropriate. And again, I encourage my colleagues here in the committee to look at the fine person that's sitting before us and his qualifications as an individual. Ambassador Sombre, I'd like to turn to you. Your charge as head of East Asia Pacific Affairs, should you be confirmed, is going to be one of the most challenging parts of the world. I know that you've had a lot of time to consider this. You've lived in the region, you've worked in the region, you understand the culture. But I'd certainly like to get your thoughts in terms of your priorities, specifically with respect to economic prosperity and how you might use that tool. LNG comes to mind, but other ideas that you may have in terms of strengthening our posture in the region.
Senator, thank you very much for that question. This was indeed one of my top priorities when I was ambassador to Thailand, was to strengthen the economic partnership in Thailand and use all the toolkit that we have at our availability, which a lot of that includes the strength of our U.S. companies and getting them to be able to find opportunities. I actually rolled out a deal team process in Thailand where I took interagency people across 4 different industries: healthcare, pharma, technology and infrastructure, aerospace and defense, and I guess the 4th one was technology again, and managed to push opportunities to really make sure that the deal team was looking at any opportunity for American companies to come into Thailand and opportunities for Thai companies to also come back to America for investments. And you're absolutely right, LNG was actually an interesting one, or actually in that case natural gas, because there's a big gas field between Thailand and Vietnam that currently is not exploited because of overlapping claims issues between ownership of that between Taiwan and between Thailand and Cambodia. And so trying to solve those issues and helping them develop their own resources while using American companies like Chevron and others to be involved in that. So my plan is to roll out those sorts of initiatives across all of EAP and really make sure that we use commercial diplomacy to try to strengthen relationships between all Asian countries and America.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Senator Rosen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really appreciate everyone holding this hearing. I want to thank our witnesses for testifying today, your families and friends that are here with you, your willingness to serve, and Mr. Rayburn, thank you for meeting with me earlier this week. It was really productive, conversation. So I'm going to turn to you, Mr. Rayburn, and talk a little bit about Iran negotiations. While you've not been involved, I know, in the ongoing negotiations between the U.S. and Iran, the outcome of these talks will have a profound impact on political dynamics in the Middle East and on your role, if confirmed. So as you mentioned in our conversation earlier this week, while Iran is at its weakest point in decades, we need to ensure it doesn't rebound. So I'd like to ask you about what you think a U.S.-Iran deal can and should look like, and how can we best take advantage of this historic low point for Iranian power in the region, and in addition to focusing on Iran's nuclear program, should a potential deal with Iran also address Iran's proxy support for terrorists and the use of ballistic missiles?
Senator, thank you for the question, and I also appreciated the time that you gave to meet with you to discuss these issues the other day. I think you're absolutely right, and the President, Secretary Rubio, Special Envoy Witkoff have been quite clear that if there is to be a deal, as they put it out, their position, and again, as you said, I'm not part of the negotiations. I'm outside the government, so I can just observe. But it seems their position is clear that if there is to be an agreement, it needs to include a total dismantlement, as the President put it, of the Iranians' nuclear program heretofore. That includes the facilities, that's the centrifuges, and so on. And there are many technical ways that can be accomplished. And also, of course, both the President and others in the administration have mentioned that yes, there will be a need for the Iranian regime to give up its sponsorship of its militant proxy terrorist network that has so destabilized the region. I think the President has made clear without that, October 7th, in his view, would never have happened. And so in order to prevent the threat of a future October 7th type of event, that needs to happen. I think also there's a general consensus on the need for the Iranian ballistic missile and UAV programs, which are being proliferated now, for example, and being used in Ukraine to great detriment, for those to be restricted as well.
Thank you. I'm going to stay on this topic a little bit and talk about the Abraham Accords expansion. Last week, it was reported that the United States is dropping its demand that Saudi Arabia normalize ties with Israel as a condition for progress on civil nuclear cooperation. And as you noted in your opening statement, normalizing relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel has been a bipartisan effort for years, and that would transform the Middle East. So as a leading champion of the Abraham Accords, I cannot push back on this news strongly enough. Needlessly, giving up the greatest leverage we have at this critical moment, I think, would be a momentous mistake. So, Mr. Rayburn, do you think it'd be wise to drop the demand for normalization from Saudi Arabia as a part of a deal to access civilian nuclear capabilities?
Senator, thank you for the question. I don't have visibility on the negotiations that have gone on, the engagement that's going on concerning normalization process. To my mind, just as a longtime analyst, observer of the region, I think normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel is going to happen. It's bound to happen because it makes so much sense. The logic is so strong for both sides, for the surrounding region, and for the United States. So I think I have confidence that there can be a diplomatic path forward to making that happen, and not in the not too distant future.
Thank you. And I'm going to stay with you on this question, and I'll go very quickly because we have to prevent the rise of extremism in Syria. We know that there are detention camps in northeastern Syria. I'm going to go very quickly. We have to repatriate people from the camps of these third-party nationals. This must happen. It has to happen thoughtfully. So how can the U.S. work with Syria and other countries to thoughtfully repatriate the refugees in a way that promotes reintegration, ensures the youngest and most vulnerable in this group are protected, not to be recruited from future threats, particularly the Al-Hol and Al-Roj detention camps?
Senator, thanks for raising that. You are right. Those are in a lot of ways, the people that are housed there are the remnants of the ISIS caliphate, and if it's not addressed, it constitutes sort of a ticking time bomb. It's something that has to be addressed. You're right. The de-radicalization has to be part of that. I think also there really has to be a redoubling, and again, I'm not involved in this, so I'm not trying to say this kind of diplomacy isn't happening right now. There really does need to be a ramping up, I think, of our diplomatic efforts to get third countries to accept the repatriation of their nationals back into those countries, so that they're not there in northeastern Syria, just sort of waiting as a danger that could happen.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Senator Scott, I think you and I are the only ones here, so I will yield to you, my friend.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Well, first off, congratulations on your nominations. Thanks for your willingness to serve. Let me start with Ambassador de Sombry. So, as we know, Communist China they've decided to be our enemy. Their government is despicable. They're sending fentanyl across our border, killing over 70,000 people a year. They've never complied with the trade agreement. The WTO, they steal our technology. Many of the things they send here are unsafe. If they violate any agreement, there's no way to get recourse in China against them. So what can you do in this new role to hold Communist China accountable? I think if there's anybody that can get a deal that makes sense with them, it's probably President Trump, but I just don't believe, they didn't even comply with the Trump trade deal in his first term. So what do you think you can do to hold them accountable?
Senator, thank you very much for that question. I think you've given a very good list of many of the challenges that we have with China. You're definitely correct in the fact that they've been calling us their adversary and enemy for a long period of time, and it's taken us a while to come to appreciate that, and we need to deal with that. As I indicated in my opening remarks, working with our allies and partners to enhance deterrence and counter the blind activities by our adversaries, including China, is one of our top priorities. I further agree with you completely that if we're going to reach agreements with China, we need to make sure that they actually follow them, and the way to do that is for them to actually show us what they're doing, not commit to what they're going to do. And that's a challenge that we need to face, and I'll be eager to work, if confirmed, on trying to solve that issue, and I believe definitely putting pressure via our allies and partners of the region is one of the important elements.
So it's my understanding you've done quite a bit of business in Hong Kong. I have a friend, Jimmy Lai, who is a journalist who was wrongfully detained by the Hong Kong authorities, which clearly is doing Xi's bidding. They've stripped Jimmy of his wealth. I think he's been in solitary confinement for over 4 years. Given your knowledge and experience with Hong Kong and the region and Communist China, first of all, you're familiar with this situation, and what have you been able to do and what can you do to help Jimmy?
Senator, thank you very much for raising that very important issue. I am very familiar with that. I'm very familiar with the fact that China is engaged in repeated violations of the Sino-British Joint Declaration that required them to maintain the high degree of autonomy, rule of law, and democratic freedoms in Hong Kong, which have not been so maintained. I'm aware of what has happened to Jimmy Lai and understand that President Trump has called for Jimmy Lai to be freed and should be freed.
Is there anything else we can do?
I think, thank you, Senator, for that question. There probably are other things that we can do, and I definitely, if confirmed, we'll look into that. I think the situation in Hong Kong, I mean, from a personal note, is deeply troubling to me. I lived in Hong Kong from 1997, before the handover, until 2020, when I moved down to assume the position as ambassador to Thailand. And there's a reason why I didn't move back to Hong Kong after that. And it's really personally deeply troubling to see what's happened to Hong Kong. It's not the place that it was before.
Mr. Pratt, I just got back from a trip to Europe, and I met with military and elected officials in Denmark, Finland, and Estonia. And to a person, they complained about our foreign military sales and the fact that, they just can't get an answer. They've watched what Putin is doing. They're afraid that they're going to be invaded. So they want to build up their military. So one, they can't get a decision out of our government to allow them to buy the equipment they want to buy, and then number two, our manufacturers don't produce it on time. So in this role, what can you do to change that?
Thank you for that question, Senator. Certainly, I'm familiar with those complaints, and certainly building up our partners in Scandinavia is critically important to countering the Russian influence. And I commit to, if confirmed, taking a thorough review of those issues and seeing how we can get those resolved.
You think, will you put time into understanding, like, it's pretty simple. There ought to be a streamlined way of getting this done. Say yes or no. When I'm a business guy, and what frustrates me about government is just tell me no. If you're not going to sell it, if you're not let me do it, I'll go someplace else. But what we're doing is we don't tell them anything. We keep them in the dark. And then even when they get approval, they have no idea whether our manufacturers are going to show up and give and provide it on any reasonable period of time. So, are you going to work with both trying to streamline the process and get our manufacturers to actually do their job?
Yes, sir. And again, I'm familiar with those complaints and very much committed to addressing them. And as you point out, part of that is working with industry to figure out what the problem areas are. Part of that's working with the Department of Defense to figure out how they can be more engaged. And certainly, I commit to working with both those partners to resolve this problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Senator, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador Desaumbre, thank you for coming to speak with me in my office yesterday. I'll jump right in to follow up with our conversation. If confirmed, it will be your responsibility to fight for the people and programs under EAP. And based on your past experience in the business world and as ambassador to Thailand, I think you will be very well positioned to do so. We talked about how your experience in Bangkok gives you particularly good insight into the value of the interagency presence in the region. Can you elaborate a little bit on some of your positive examples of leveraging that interagency effectively, like the U.S. TDA, the IC, law enforcement, and how you'd like to empower our missions in the region to continue that work?
Senator, thank you very much for the question. Again, thank you for making yourself and your staff available to meet yesterday, and also for, obviously, your support last time when I was up for nomination. I appreciate that as well. Yeah, the nature of our presence overseas is very important, and the interagency aspect of that can be very valuable. Some examples in Thailand, for example, we have the International Law Enforcement Academy in Thailand, and very significant law enforcement cooperation in various different arms of both the Thai law enforcement, but also regional law enforcement that come to Thailand to train at the ILEA Academy is a great example of ways that we can increase connectivity and also promote more appropriate law activities by police officers and law enforcement agencies. On the economic front, from the deal team perspective, I used with USTDA quite substantially, particularly on the lines of effort on infrastructure and aerospace and defense, and ways that we could get studies done that could show the feasibility of various different projects. And I mean, the list goes on and on. There's lots of things that we can do together, and I believe that will be my role in EAP to really make sure that we do that in all the countries around EAP.
Thank you. Similarly, there's actually quite a sizable American population throughout the Asia-Pacific region, folks who need access to U.S. citizen services and American businesses who are trying to operate on a level playing field in the region. How do you quantify the value of retaining an active presence across this large region and the economic value of business deals that are facilitated by our embassies and consulates? I mean, basically, how do we make sure that our foreign service professionals are given credit for the work they do that directly contributes to American prosperity?
Senator, that's a very good question, and clearly the safety and security of Americans overseas is one of the top priority of the State Department, and ensuring that they have sufficient access to consular services and others is critically important, and is something that we need to ensure happens. Obviously, some countries are more densely populated and have more Americans than others, and so where we have those services is something that we obviously need to look at from time to time. But I definitely believe that that's important, both in terms of the services for the American citizens, but also for promoting the commercial activities of American businesses in those countries as well.
Thank you. Touching on another issue related to our nation's prosperity, a real economic issue that impacts folks here at home, although they may not all realize the connection, is the prevalence of these cyber scam centers that are targeting Americans. A lot of them are originating throughout Southeast Asia. Can you talk about what types of existing authorities you can use to help address this issue if confirmed, and any actions we can take on a multilateral or bilateral basis?
Senator, thank you very much. I am very much aware of those cyber scams. Obviously, the countries of particularly Burma, Cambodia, and Laos are where many of them occur. I understand that over $10 billion has been lost of cyber scams by U.S. citizens. So you're absolutely correct. This is a critical issue and something we need to try to address, and something I will, if confirmed, look into the best way of addressing it. We clearly have ability to go after individuals that are violating laws and be able to do that. Obviously, sometimes that may not have great effect if they're in a country that I can't do anything about them while they're there. But I think in those countries, for example, greater cooperation in the law enforcement area so they can improve their capacity to enforce their laws, because in many circumstances these are happening either with or without the consent or approval of the relevant country. They're happening there, and sometimes increasing law enforcement cooperation to increase capacity could be one way that we might think about addressing it.
Thank you. Look, the United States is a Pacific nation. People forget that. And EAP is full of critical allies and partners. I hope to see that reflected in how we prioritize our engagement and empower our people overseas. If you're confirmed, I hope you and I can work together to make that happen through strong coordination and collaboration between the executive and legislative branches, and I hope that you'll make yourself available to me in my office once you're confirmed.
Senator Duckworth, thank you very much for that, and I definitely will intend to cooperate with this committee on all matters, and I agree completely that EAP is a priority region, and I think, as has been stated, I mean, China is the pacing threat, and we need to address that.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations, gentlemen, on your nominations. Mr. Pratt, let me start with you. The State Department's Civilian Harm Incidents Response Guidance, also known as CHIRG, is designed to track and reduce incidents of civilian harm linked to U.S. arms transfers and propose recommendations to prevent future harm. So I have a very simple yes or no question for you. Do you support the continued implementation of CHIRG?
Thank you very much for that question, Senator. I do pledge to support all applicable laws. Thank you.
Well, I'm asking you about CHIRG specifically, right? So if you could just let me know whether you support the continued implementation of CHIRG. This should not be hard.
Thank you, Senator. I do pledge to support all applicable law, and in particular, the President's 2018 CAT, Conventional Arms Transfer Policy. Right. So yes, sir.
Well, I understand that. I know about the Trump CAT policy from 2018, and what people have built on that. This is obviously a separate question, but if you don't want to answer directly, I guess the record will show that. Let me turn, if I could, then to another question related to U.S. arms transfers. In response to a question for the record, Mr. Thomas DiNanno, who's the nominee to be Undersecretary of State for Arms Control and International Security, committed to abiding by the informal and formal congressional review process for arms sales and arms transfers. So my question to you is, will you make the same commitment he did?
Thank you for that question, Senator. Yes, I will make that same commitment, and I look forward to working very closely with this committee on that process.
Excellent, good. Obviously, there are people who have ideas of changing it and reforming it, and welcome all ideas, but I hope we can all agree that that has to be done through the statutory process. And I take your answer as agreeing with that. Yes, Mr. Rayburn, when we met, I indicated that I supported the lifting of sanctions on Syria. I also indicated that given the current Syrian government's genealogy, I thought it'd be important to have snapback provisions to protect U.S. interests. Of course, the president announced that he was going to lift sanctions on Syria during this trip. I know others have asked about this, but my question to you is, are you, and I understand you've committed to moving forward to implement the president's decision, is that right?
Senator, thank you. Yes, I have, absolutely.
Okay. So, look, I was very glad to see that through Steve Witkoff's efforts, we secured the release of Edon Alexander. We need, of course, to secure the release of all the hostages. We also need to immediately end the 24-day-long blockade by the Netanyahu government that has prevented the flow of shipments of food, of water, of other supplies to 2 million civilians in Gaza. And I have to say, I'm extremely disappointed that amidst a lot of the deals, the trillion-dollar deals going down right now on the president's trip, and despite all the talk about the Qatari plane that's going to be gifted to him, the president has not, to my knowledge, called for an end to that blockade. At least 55 children have now died as a result of malnutrition and related illnesses specifically connected to this blockade. Cindy McCain, who, as you know, has been leading the World Food Program, has said, and I quote, "Families in Gaza are starving while the food they need is sitting at the borders," unquote. So my question to you, Mr. Rayburn, is would you agree that this is a violation of Section 620I of the Foreign Assistance Act?
Senator, thanks for the question. I also appreciated the chance to spend time with you and discuss these and other important regional issues. Being outside the system, I don't have access or visibility to the U.S. government assessments of the situation on the ground. So I can't speak to, to the actual humanitarian assessment that would drive that kind of decision-making or analysis. So I just don't know. What I have seen, just as an outside observer, as others have, is I think there's a desire on the U.S. part, on Israel's part, to try to think creatively, such as through the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, about ways to try to restore humanitarian.
Mr. Rayburn, no, I was just asking you a direct question about 620I of the Foreign Assistance Act. Let me just say in closing, Mr. Chairman, that this seems to be a no-brainer if you look at the text of that law, U.S. law, which says that the United States should not provide security assistance to any country that is indirectly or directly impeding the delivery of humanitarian assistance into a zone where U.S. weapons are being used. It's pretty straightforward, and a blockade obviously qualifies. And I will just say, with respect to this proposed new idea, I think we've seen the testimony of well-respected international organizations, UNICEF, among others, that have said that the new plan would be terrible when it comes to human rights and the negative, harmful impact on children. So I just hope as you discuss that and float that, people will recognize that it's not a recipe for the problem we're dealing with right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Van Hollen. Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple more questions. I wanted to go back to Mr. DeSombre because I thought your comment about the importance of providing law enforcement training for some of our partners in the Indo-Pacific is an important point. I've had a chance to visit the International Law Enforcement Academy in Budapest and was very impressed with the work that they do. We're still trying to figure this out, but it's my understanding that the skinny budget the President sent over actually reduces that funding, particularly with respect to Thailand, which I know, given your experience there, you would have an interest in. So I would hope that you would take a look at that and see how we can ensure that those programs that are doing a good job are actually funded.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. Obviously, I'm not involved in the reorganization and the plan, so I don't know what it is, but I do agree that ILEA and law enforcement training can be a useful part of our foreign policy.
We also had a hearing, one of our first of this committee this year, on the PRC in China. We didn't have any, because it was so early in the administration, we didn't have any witnesses from the Trump administration, but we did have outside experts. And one of the things they testified to is the fact that right now the PRC and China are spending over $1 billion a year, billion with a B, on disinformation and misinformation efforts around the world, focused, of course, in the Indo-Pacific. It's particularly concerning, given that the administration is shutting down the U.S. Agency for Global Media that provides for Radio Free Asia, Voice of America, all of those programs that allow us to counter that Chinese disinformation and misinformation that's going into the Indo-Pacific. So can you tell me whether you would be willing to advocate for a counter to what the PRC is doing and how you envision that being done if we don't have any of the apparatus and the infrastructure to do that?
Senator, thank you very much for that question, and I am in complete agreement that ensuring that people receive the truth and aren't subject to the misinformation from the Chinese is incredibly important. Again, I'm not aware of exactly or involved with the way that things are being restructured, but I am confident that the State Department has other tools at its disposal to be able to ensure that we project American values and our views around the world.
I think when you were ambassador to Thailand the first time, what tools did you have that you used that were available through the State Department outside of some of those media efforts?
Well, Senator, thank you again for that question. We have obviously public diplomacy efforts in all of the missions and globally, and actually at least a little bit that I understand about the organization is to empower more of the bureaus and the missions to ensure that our efforts are all aligned with our foreign policy. So I think there's a lot of benefits to ensuring that the regional bureaus and the missions themselves are the ones taking over this effort, and I will advocate to ensure that we have sufficient resources in the bureau and the missions to be able to do that.
Well, I would look forward to having you come back to share with us how you intend to do that without an infrastructure to get the message out to people. Because I think we're agreed on the goal. And, you know, if you don't like the way the U.S. Agency for Global Media is operating, then let's find a replacement for it. But to take it down and not have anything in its place seems to me to be very short-sighted, and to give, we're already seeing the advantages that gives the PRC in the Indo-Pacific. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. We've been at this for a while. I'm going to introduce for the record at request of Senator Ricketts an article from May 14th, Wall Street Journal, Republicans Unite to Thwart Iran. He wanted that put in the record. I'm going to do that. We have one questioner left, and that's Senator Cruz, and I have to leave for a meeting, but I'm going to turn it over to Senator Cruz. I want to thank you, all of you, for your willingness to serve. And Senator Cruz, if you would do, just one second. Senator Sheen, did you have anything else you wanted for the record? Okay. All right. Senator Cruz, the floor is yours, and if you'd wrap it up for me and put the usual matters in the record, I would appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
Very good. Thank you.
See what that gets.
Mr. Rayburn, you were involved in withdrawing from the catastrophic Obama-Iran nuclear deal during the first Trump administration. After that withdrawal, President Trump imposed a maximum pressure campaign that brought the regime to the brink of collapse and kept their nuclear program in a box. President Biden functionally re-implemented the nuclear deal, providing all of the concessions so that Iran could build out its nuclear program and rebuild its oil exports. I used to ask Biden officials why they weren't cracking down on Iran, and the answer they used to give was essentially, there's nothing we can do. President Trump and the current Republican Congress are committed to rebuilding that maximum pressure. Talk about what a maximum pressure campaign would look like and how you intend to pursue it.
Senator, thanks for the question, and I appreciated you taking the time so that we could discuss these and other regional issues also offline. Absolutely, it's not rocket science, Senator. I had a chance to participate and see what works. You have to build out an enforcement apparatus. It's one thing to have the sanctions on the books. You have to have the people, the organizations, the resources, the diplomatic engagement to actually enforce. You have to engage with your allies. You have to disrupt the ghost fleet of vessels that the Iranian regime uses to illicitly transport its oil. You have to expose its financial dealings so that they can't benefit from the money that moves with those transactions. You have to warn maybe unwitting participants in those transactions. You have to expose the beneficial ownership of the vessels, of the front companies, of the financial houses. You have to engage the insurance sector so that they understand that they're potentially insuring IRGC tankers and things like that. And you have to engage with those who flag the vessels so that they understand what they're doing. When you do all those things, you can make a real dent in their oil exports. At the same time, you also have to be politically isolating them. You have to make the Iranian regime an international pariah on the terms of its malign behavior, and do that with allies, with a coalition of political and economic pressure. And that's what works. I've seen it work.
Well, I will say that was a thorough and comprehensive answer, and it is precisely the opposite of what the Biden administration did for 4 years, which is why Iran is on the verge of nuclear breakout. As part of the maximum pressure campaign, President Trump is committed to ensure that Iran is never allowed to enrich uranium. He has called for what has been described as, quote, complete dismantlement. Iran cannot be allowed to keep spinning centrifuges because under the Biden administration, they built out their program so much that any activity would allow them to cheat. You spoke about this earlier with Senator Ricketts, but I want to circle back to it. Talk about President Trump's red line of dismantlement and why it's so important.
Yes, Senator, thank you. It's because the Iranians, if civil nuclear power is the objective of the Iranian nuclear program, they do not need to be able to enrich their own uranium. There are almost 24, there are dozens of other countries in the world that have similar civil nuclear power programs that do not have their own indigenous enrichment. They purchase the fuel from third parties. They also don't reprocess the spent fuel, so there's no need for the Iranians to do that. And that is the president's position. There needs to be a dismantlement of their facilities, of their centrifuges, and so on. There are many technical ways that can be accomplished. Secretary Rubio has laid out the same. Special Envoy Witkoff has laid out the same. And it's because of the Iranian regime's demonstrated bad faith. It's that they don't operate in good faith when you strike an agreement with them, so there has to be very strict restrictions and oversight.
I think that's absolutely right, and I would note, at least from my perspective, I see no reason that the Iranians should have nuclear power generation either. They are literally swimming on a sea of oil. It's not like they are lacking for energy and sources of energy, and I feel confident the Ayatollah is not staying awake at night worried about climate change. And so, at least from my perspective, I'm not interested in anything radioactive being anywhere near a theocratic zealot who leads chants of death to America and death to Israel. Mr. DeSombre, the Chinese Communist Party is working every day to erode Taiwan's status globally. For years, I've raised concerns over the State Department's deeply frustrating policy prohibiting our Taiwanese allies from displaying symbols of their sovereignty, including their flag, on American soil. That was an Obama-era policy that came about at the express behest of the Chinese embassy. I fought against that policy. I pushed legislation reversing that policy, language that has been repeatedly advanced and received bipartisan support in this committee. It is the repeated explicit policy coming out of this committee to reverse that policy. The Trump administration changed it, but the Biden administration immediately restored the prohibition. Secretary of State Rubio stated as part of his written testimony to this committee that he is committed to working with the committee to strengthen our unofficial ties with Taiwan. I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit, but describe the importance of bolstering our Taiwanese allies.
Senator, thank you very much for that question, and thank you for making your staff available to meet with me earlier this week. On a personal note, Taiwan was the first foreign country I lived in after I graduated from Stanford and have had a deep experience there on a business perspective over the last 28 years. Our relationship with Thailand and our relationship with Taiwan is very important. They're a great partner of ours, and we should seek to strengthen that partnership and also encourage our allies and partners to support Taiwan.
Well, I agree with that, and I'm going to encourage you and your colleagues at State to go back to the previous Trump policy that allows the Taiwanese to display their symbols of sovereignty. The Obama-Biden caving to communist China policy is not a good one and not one that the Trump administration should be following. I want to thank each of the witnesses for providing us with the benefit of your testimony and responses. Before closing, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to add any letters of support the committee has received to be added to the record. Without objection, so ordered. I will also note for the information of members that the record will remain open until close of business tomorrow, May 16th, including for members to submit questions for the record. With the thanks of this committee, the hearing is now adjourned.